10 hottest comics of the week based off of cover prices data. That's right, real data, not speculation. Not like, oh, this book looks like it's interesting, so we're going to throw this in the top 10 list. No, this one too. No, it's data. Books that are sold on all of the platforms that you can aggregate data from. So these dictate the top 10 hottest comics of the week. We're not sponsored by Cover Price, but we use it like a stock index and measure the hottest books that are trending each and every week. This list from Cover Price comes out on a Monday. Our live show is on a Friday. What we like to do is go through the top 10 hottest comics from that list. Chris takes 3 of his most interesting picks and tells you why they're interesting from that list. Chris, we're going to get right into it right now and talk about the top 10 hottest comics of the week. And here we go. At number 10 is Venom. Number 9, the animation variant. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous looking cover. Number 9, we have Usagi Yojimbo 20, the Jesus Hervas 1 in 10 variant. First appearance of Yukichi Yamamoto. This is a brand new character that people are going crazy for. Number 8, we have Dark Reign Young Avengers. Number 1, the first appearance of Sylvie Blushton, a.k.a. the Enchantress. If you're not watching Loki, you should be. It's awesome. Number 7 is Hawkeye number 1. Number 6, The Nice House on the Lake. I think that, yes, that is cover A. And number 5, we have Web of Spider-Man. Number 1, the first appearance of Harley Keener, the kid from Iron Man. Number 3, and he was also in Endgame at Tony's funeral. Number 4 is Venom. Number 9, the first appearance of Dylan Brock. That ties back into our 10th selection, which is the variant, the animated variant. Number 3 is Thor Annual number 18, first cameo of Lady Loki. Again, you should be watching Loki. And number 2, we have Nightwing 81, the first full appearance of Heartless. Yo, this series, outstanding. Outstanding. I love this series. Number 1 is the cover A of Usagi Yojimbo. Number 20. Chris, there are 3 picks from this list that you find most interesting, and we're going to get to them. Right? Is that right?
That is right. That is right. Let's get to them. You know what, though? I got to take a minute before I get to them. I got to reiterate what Jeff just said. We are not sponsored by Cover Price. For those that aren't aware of what Cover Price does, they take data from the top 5 online sales sites and basically create these lists from that data. Let that be clear. It's raw data. So we use them not because we are affiliated with them or not, but because it's based on data and it's there for us to utilize. All right. The 3 picks that I pick, again, they're my picks. Nobody's in my ear telling me to pick them. We're not trying to push these books. Sometimes I pick books that I don't even like, and then I don't even know why the hell they're on this list. But the reason that they're on the list is something that I enjoy talking about. All right. So these are my picks. I picked them for reasons that I tell you when I'm talking about them. All right. We had a bit of misunderstanding from last week's top 10, so I had to address that. And ironically enough, number 3 on my list today was on my picks and my top 3 picks last week, Thor Annual number 18. So there's a couple reasons why this book is on the list. I do want to make it clear, and I want to apologize to my viewers, because I did state that last week Key Collector app put a ping out for this book. Now, I'm not a paid subscriber to Key Collector. I'll use them, I'll use them, their website as a database. I'm not a paid subscriber, so I'm not too familiar with the alerts and the pings. But what I do know is that there was a change to the book that stated Loki Spec, and it was shared on social media by some big names and word got around. But when I brought up this book last week, I was merely talking about the instantaneous information that is at our fingertips, whether it's from apps like Key Collector, whether it's from, databases like Cover Price, whether it's from YouTubers, that are hopping on, delivering this information via social media platforms like YouTube. We have the ability to find out what's going on with speculation with the snap of a finger in this day and age. The point I was trying to make when talking about this book last week wasn't to point a finger at any app talking about a book specifically, was that because we have all these resources there, we can take a $2 and $3 book up to a $40 book overnight because of that. It is not a bad thing. Nobody's manipulating the market. Nobody's forcing you to buy anything that you don't want to buy. It's just a fact of a matter, and it has to do with basic economics. Let that be clear. Now, here's the interesting about this book that the reason why I put it on this list again this week, okay? This week, already from a hot week last week, it increased 268% in sales, all right? Now, check this out. This is crazy. And when I say crazy, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, it's crazy, right? Last week, the high raw was for $40. This week, more than doubled. High raw, $95. All right. Last week, there wasn't even a 9.8 on the sales census. This week, a 9.8 sold for $510. Now, get this. This is fun information for you all to take in. All right. Over the last week, since last Saturday to today, there were 3 slab sales. They were all 9.8s. All right. The first one sold on 6/19, which was last weekend, for $510. That was the record high one, right? Then the day after that, on the 20th, one sold for $394. A bit less, but still, that's a high dollar amount for this early 90s book. The third one sold 2 days ago on the 23rd for $416. Wow. Okay, let's look at these. This was the point I was trying to make last week. That's all. You got all this stuff at your fingertips, no matter what app it is, or no matter what YouTuber is sharing it on Instagram or who's talking about it. We have phones in our hands to where we get this information instantaneously. Look at the first 9.8 sale, $510. So technically, when you have a high raw of $40, somebody could have bought the book in a high grade raw, cleaned and pressed it, and sent it off to CGC or CBCS or whatever to possibly get a 9.8 grade. That would have cost them way less taking that chance than $510. But what did I say people do? They're not waiting. They're not waiting to see the bell-shaped curve go up like this. They want it so bad that they see one on the market and they said, you know what? Oh my gosh, there's speculation around this. All the apps have, okay, there's rumor speculation. All the YouTubers are talking about it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make a conscious decision and say, well, you know what? I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to buy it for $510. Who knows if that's even a fair market value? Meaning, who knows if there's anybody else out there that's willing to pay that much? All it took was for one person to pay that much because there wasn't that many on the market. Not that because they don't exist or there's not a bunch of raw copies out there, but nobody cared about it a couple weeks ago. So what does that do then? Then that sets the tone. People look at that sale and say, well, shoot, this is a hot book. Maybe I'll go buy one at 9.8. But as you guys can see with the next couple of books, the next one sold for over $115 cheaper. So that person probably overpaid a little bit because now you got to sell for $394. Then after that, you got to sell for $416. So what's happening now? Now, people are making more conscious decisions. They've sat on it. A couple of more books came onto the market and they said, well, maybe I'll pay 300 and something. And the next person says, maybe I'll pay 400 and something. And then there you go. You have that bell-shaped incline. All right. So Jeff, viewers, again, it's all I'm talking about. All that I'm talking about is the inner workings of economics. It's not bad. I think it's great. I think it is great that we are able to have all this information at our fingertips. It allows more people to be involved in this hobby. It allows more money to come into the hobby, which is a good thing for sellers. It's a good thing for collectors that are sitting on the books. It's a good thing for the publishers, the LCSs, the secondary market. There's nothing bad with it. And people are using apps. They're watching YouTubers, and it's all part of this community where we are da-da-da-da-da. And then I had to go, and I even released a video because I talked about this being a part of FOMO. And I had to release a video saying, no, FOMO is not a bad thing. I mean, it can be bad if you're not, conscious of what you're doing. But ultimately, fear of missing out isn't a bad thing as long as you understand the risks involved in what you're doing. And before I end, I will say I used a stock market example. Are people that are buying Amazon stock after it blew up or Apple stock after it blew up out of FOMO, are they bad? Are they wrong for doing that? No, they just missed the boat on when they could get it cheap, and they probably want to buy it now, even though it's more expensive, because their fear is missing out at a price that's going to allow them to have a return on investment. Still, it's a sound investment, although they just might not make as much money. Same thing goes with comic books. People that have FOMO, for the most part, care about the investment side of things, and their fear isn't about missing out on a book, because they'll always be there. It's fear of missing out on a price range that will give them a return on investment.
Well said. I think the difference between a stock like Apple or Amazon is that comic books are a bit more volatile, and they have more peaks and valleys, deeper peaks and valleys. So,
Absolutely.
I think I love that we have these tools out there. I have no problem with Key Collector. Well, I have problems with Key Collector and some things that they do. I have no problem with it as an app. But it has created this reactionary market, right? This reactionary buyer that maybe not as educated and maybe doesn't give themselves enough time to do the research on some things, and just, like you said, I better just jump on this right now. So is it bad? No. If that's what they want to pay for it, that's great. If content creators are saying, this is what we believe, that's great. People do that with the stock market, right?
Yep.
So it's the same thing in a way, but just, again, as long as people know what they're getting into and not going crazy and putting their family out of their house, then go for it. I mean, if you think that $510, either you really wanted that issue really badly, or you think there's a high upside or return on investment, go for it. We're not dogging you for doing that. Right. But again,
understand the risk. Just understand the risk.
Exactly. All right.
I want to make a point too. You did say, you had some issues just with some things Key Collector may do. I want to, speaking for myself, I'm sure, you probably agree too, Jeff. That goes for any industry entity though. We could probably say the same thing. And I try to talk about this constantly as of late. I talked about this in my live stream. I support CGC, but I have a lot of problems with, like some of their quality control, some of their transparency issues. But I only talk about it and give them criticism because I want them to better themselves. Just because we may say, oh, we disagree with that this app does, or we disagree with that this grading company does, or we may disagree with what that one YouTuber said about this. It doesn't mean that we're against them. It just means that, look, we're not going to I could go to a restaurant and I like, a couple of their dishes really good, but I can't stand the special of the day. I think it's disgusting because I don't eat fish and it's fish or something like that, hypothetically. Just because we may disagree with something that a company does doesn't mean that we're targeting them or that we're against them. That's just, I'm sure there's stuff that you and I do, Jeff, that some of our viewers watch and say, nope, we disagree with the canon on that. But yet, you still support us. You like overall what we do, and we're a good thing for the hobby. Well, at least I hope you think that.
Well, they're still here, so maybe they did.
Yep, they're still here.
All right. Moving on, though. Your second most interesting pick of the week. What do you got?
All right. So what's interesting, this book ties into the number 3, the Thor Annual. Thor Annual is still booming, even though most likely this female Loki that is in Thor Annual has nothing to do with the Loki show. But this book seems more plausible to tie into the Loki show. So my number 2 pick is Dark Reign. Young Avengers number 1. This is the first appearance of Sylvie Lushton, the second Enchantress. All right. And for those that haven't watched the Loki show, I won't even go into details. But for those that have watched, you probably know why this is probably at least at least pertaining to the Loki show, if I was to put my money somewhere, I personally would put it to this book next to the Thor Annual 18. There's been stuff going on that is almost apparent now that what's going on with this book is correlating to the Loki show. That's just my take on it and my perspective. Don't take my word for it. All right. So this book has climbed, though, 239% increase in sales, a high raw sale of $110. So again, this book shot up. But here's the thing. I do believe, I'm going to bet that this book is going to be on this list next week because of this week's Loki show. Because remember, these lists are compiled before Wednesday, before these books are announced. These books are compiled before the show drops on Wednesday. And there was some stuff that happened in this week's show that I think is going to drive this book up even more. So I'm not only looking for this book to be on the list next week, I'm looking for that high raw sale to be even higher and maybe even see a possible 9.8 sale on the list next week as well.
Yeah, it's well. So we're not going to give away spoilers, even though we just can't squeeze it in talking about these shows sometimes. Like, we have so much going on. But I agree with you on that. This Dark Reign Young Avengers #1. But I really think that Sylvie is a combination of a lot of these female Lokis they took from source material from a lot of these books that you're talking about. I do want to address one question here. Does anyone else want that variant jacket from Loki? I do. Chris, you'd rock that. Yes, you would.
Yeah. Is that like a is that kind of like an old school what do you call those from the 80s?
It's like a lighter version of like a UPS driver's jacket. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they kind of wear is like that.
Yeah,
it's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know we kind of rocked those in something like that in the early 90s with the Cortezes and whatnot.
I think you're thinking about members only.
Members only. There you go.
It's not
like that.
Only.
No, it's not. It's different than that.
Little things.
Yep.
Hey, we are going off subject here because you have your number one most interesting pick from this list. What is it, Chris? What is it?
My number one pick on this list is Warlock and the Infinity Watch #1. Just kidding. That book isn't on the list. I'm just trolling Jeff. I had to get him again. All right, guys. My number one pick on the list this week was the number one pick. Usagi Yojimbo, number 20. There was the variant as well. This is the first appearance of a new character, Yukichi Yamamoto. Let's look at the numbers first and then I'll talk about this book. 470% increase in sales since its first week release. A high raw going for $35. The book's just moving. I love the fact that this character made number one on the list. There's a few things going on. There is a Netflix show featuring the character right now. I think that's definitely brought this character back into the limelight. Another thing that I think has helped this character have some wind under him as of late too is the Last Ronin. Ever since the Last Ronin came out, and the reason why I say that is because in the 80s, and they've crossed over a lot, but even as a kid, I would always relate Usagi to the Ninja Turtles. I do believe, wasn't it? And correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't they both published back then by Mirage?
I'm not sure. I
think they might have had the same publisher at one point in time back then. Of course, they're both on IDW right now. So, and look, we see first appearances in new releases these days really pick up steam, and it's really good for the what you would call the retail primary market. Whether or not, and here's the thing, I'm not here to argue that it's just speculators buying. I'm not here to do that. I don't care if people are buying it because they're speculating on it and they just want to flip it, or that people are actually wanting it because it's a new character and they want to read the story. But all of those things involved, these new books are driving the market, and I do feel that especially the independents right now, and I do feel that Marvel and DC are catching up and taking notes. But when you see these new releases get hot like this, and the new characters that come into play, even if they may get hot and sizzle off a little bit, like Punchline with Batman 89 and 92, in terms of value, the characters have a lot more thought into them, a lot more developed into them these days, where if you go back 30 years ago into the 90s, even in the 80s, outside of your Venom or your Deadpool, so many of those characters were one-offs, or they just didn't last. They even tried to give them their own series like Sleepwalker or something, and they don't last, and then they're gone and they fade away. We are really in a new age of comic book collecting, and I think there is that urgency for creators to create characters and dive into these characters to make them characters that are not only that are going to stick around primarily because we, the readers, find interest in them, and we're not just buying them up because of spec value. We want to learn about these new characters, and we want them to stay. I mean, another book that I didn't talk about was that Nightwing 81 with the new character, and you talked about it, Jeb, with that story being so good. That's what's really pulling the people in. It's not even just because, it's a new character and I want to flip these books. There's something going on with the stories. I think I haven't read Usagi, so I can't speak to it. But watching the trends and how these things have been going, I really think that's what's happening with this book as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think Usagi has a diehard fan base too, and seeing a new character within the Usagi world is huge. I will say this, and I don't have the facts, but the character being developed for Netflix, it's 100 years in the future, and the character's name, Yukichi, which is in issue 20 here, there's one letter off for the character's name in the future. So people are like, either maybe the Netflix press release made a mistake and this is the actual character.
Right.
The character is related to this character, but it's a really strange coincidence how close the names are. So I think a lot of people are jumping on this for many reasons. And it's nice to see an indie type character like this getting some more love. It has been part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles world in a way. I believe it was on the cartoon. Usagi has been on the cartoon. But it's interesting to see. And again, right now, I guess other than Netflix, people are just want characters, want new characters, fresh characters. And this is a perfect example of that. So that is a great list right there. That is a great 3 most interesting lists. We'll have another top 10 list next week. And again, we're not sponsored by Cover Price, but we use it as a tool. So we'll have another top 10 list from them next week that we'll dissect, and Chris will bring his 3 most interesting picks from that list as well. Tell me I'm wrong, Chris.
You're wrong. Just kidding.